everyone, it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be doing my May wrap-up. So before we get into this, I wanted to really thank you guys for your support in the fact that I didn't put up a new reading vlog this past Monday. The reason for that you guys would have seen on my Twitter or Instagram, but one of the kittens that we adopted ended up passing away in a really tragic disease. I really still don't want to talk about it a lot, but I did read all of the wishes that you guys sent me and they were greatly appreciated. It's just something that, like, it's really difficult, so I don't really want to discuss it, and you guys have been really respectful of that fact and I really appreciate that. So I'm not really going to talk about that anymore. I wanted to mention it in this video rather than in my reading vlog because tomorrow I leave for BOOKCON and I wanted my reading vlog to be able to be a really exciting and happy video. I didn't really want anything sad happening in it, so that's why I'm not really going to talk about it there. I was going to talk about it here. But if you wanted to see anything else about that, I talked about it on Twitter. I really just don't want to talk about it. I'm sorry, I know that sounds awful, but I feel like I am due that respect. I don't know. But anyways, I just want to get into this wrap up. I had a really good reading month in May. I ended up reading quite a few books and I'm super happy with that. I didn't know how the month would go. I didn't end up writing a lot, but hey, at least I read. And that's really fine because June is going to be my big writing month, so I'm a-okay with that. So the first book that I ended up finishing in May is A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. I actually did the second of my thoughts while reading videos surrounding this book, so I will link that down below if you have read it, or you can read it along with me. I give you spoilery thoughts live as I'm reading the book. It's a really fun video to do, so I hope you guys are liking those. But this is a novella that is following the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and I didn't know what to expect from it initially. I didn't know it was going to be this small, and it's really just kind of a fun short story. Now, based on Sarah J. Maas's other novellas, particularly in The Assassin's Blade, all of them have like a full plot arc, but this one didn't really. It was more so you got to see like the winter solstice. I feel like it would be like a fun stocking stuffer Christmas story, but on its own, I think if you aren't really invested in the world and really invested in the characters, you aren't going to like this at all, and you're going to find it to be a waste of money. For what it is, I will say it is kind of expensive. However, I do like the world and I like the characters, so I did have a good time reading it. It wasn't the best thing ever. It isn't really necessary to read. There's only like one key thing I feel like that happens, and that's the only thing you need to know going into the next books. I don't know if the next books are going to be this small. I don't really know, but it was fun, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read, I actually listened to. I don't own my physical copy yet because I'm waiting for the paperback to come out, but if you guys didn't know, I am an Audible affiliate, so if you click the link down below and sign up for a free trial, you can get 2 free audiobooks. But the book that I listened to is Ozland by Wendy Spinelli, which is, I believe, the culminating novel to the Everland trilogy, and I did enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it as much as the 2 previous books. I would recommend listening to these on audio because they are great audiobooks. Like Umberland, I was so invested in on audiobook, but this one, just for some reason, I didn't really connect with the characters as much. In addition to that, I felt like not as many elements of its inspiration were brought in. Like in Everland, you can really see the Peter Pan elements. In Umberland, really get that Alice in Wonderland vibe, but in Ozland, I didn't feel like it was as much, I guess, an homage to what it is retelling. All that being said, it was a really solid conclusion. I am glad that I have read it or listened to it, but it's a really great series, tons of fun, surprisingly dark and eerie, especially because it does read a little bit on the younger end of YA, but I'm glad the series is over and I'm happy that I read it. Next is another book that kind of ended up being dark and creepy, and that is Ink by Alice Broadway. Honestly, this was 100% a cover buy. Like, I'm not even ashamed to say that. Look at this cover. It is gorgeous. Even like under the dust jacket, it is so beautiful. It's black on the back. I thought it had more. Anyways, the book itself is a very interesting concept, and it's kind of similar to a concept that I have thought of previously for a book that I had wanted to write, but I obviously never did it. But it's basically this world where like your skin tells your story, so the tattoos that you have, you get them for different milestones and stuff in your life. And then when you die, they decide if your skin is going to be preserved in like a skin book or if you're just going to be forgotten, basically. It was very interesting, and honestly, I thought it was going to be like a fantasy sci-fi, but it's actually a dystopian novel. The entire time, I just kept on being reminded of The Giver by Lois Lowry, and the first time I had read that, and then I got some Hunger Games vibes in there. Also, Unwind by Neil Shusterman. There were just so many different dystopians that were brought to mind. Not in a bad way at all. I think that's because it was so well done. The Giver is definitely the one that it made me think of the most, though. So this featured a lot of eerie, dark, and very morbid undertones, and it explored a lot of big questions that I feel like everyone has, just philosophical life questions in a different dystopian setting. It was a really unique dystopian, especially because I felt like it wasn't so much a rebellion story, not like rebelling against the man like a lot of other dystopians are. It was more discovery and self-discovery for the main character. I had heard really mixed things before going into this, but this is another one that I actually listened to the audiobook for, and I'm glad that I did because it was an excellent audiobook, and I'm glad that I didn't give in to the people saying it wasn't a very good book because I really liked it. So I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. Also, I totally forgot to tell you, but Ozland I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Next, I picked up 99 Days by Katie Cotugno. This is another book that I had heard really mixed things about, but unfortunately I fell on the side of not liking it. I don't know what it was, but a lot of the books that I read this month, I really struggled to connect to the characters. And for me, if I can't connect to the characters, I'm almost always going to dislike that book. This is the second of Katie Cotugno's novels that I have read, the first one being Top 10, and I had the same feeling in this one as I did with the other one. And it's a really interesting thing because I don't think I've ever had that before, but what it is I feel like I am jumping into the middle of a story that I haven't even been briefed on, and I'm so confused and lost, and I'm just like, what? I feel like she kind of starts like mid-action in a really weird way. I don't even really know how to describe it, but I just know that I don't really like it. So that, coupled with the fact that all the characters were awful, I hated all of them, and the relationships were so shitty. Like, it's basically relationships that are destroying family relationships, which I just was like, what is happening? No. And it just was overall a really annoying book. So I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars, but I did still end up picking up the next one. I didn't read it directly after, but I'm going to talk about it now anyways because it is just apropos. So I picked up 9 Days and 9 Nights, which is a sequel. It just came out, and this I actually enjoyed. I didn't love it, but it definitely was better than the first one. This one I ended up listening to the audiobook for because I was just kind of like, meh, I'll just listen to the audiobook. And the audiobook was really good. I liked traveling around in this novel. It's definitely not one of the best European travel novels that I've read, but it was a good one. I felt like it was a lot of build up to something that you knew was gonna happen in the end, and it was just kind of like, oh, okay, yep, there it is. But I did like things that it dealt with. It dealt with some important modern issues, and I think it did it in a good way. So this I gave like a 2.5, maybe a 3 out of 5 stars. I feel like this was just the month of audiobooks because honestly, I only have one other book that I physically read on this list. So the next audiobook that I listened to was Dear Martin by Nick Stone. I have had this on my TBR for quite a while, which I think is ridiculous because it is tiny. So I decided to listen to the audiobook because it was available on Scribd. And Scribd is just one of the services that I use for audiobooks. I've talked about it in a reading vlog before. I'll link that reading vlog down below. But this is inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement, and it is a very prevalent story. It's kind of along the lines of The Hate U Give, but it's told partially in letters to Martin Luther King Jr. as the main character is trying to make sense of the world today and think of what Martin would do. I will say, I wish it were a little bit longer because then I think I would have been able to really get invested in the characters and their story. But for what it was and being a really short novel, it really did pack a punch and make commentary on race relations in a really great way. I loved the way that Martin Luther King Jr.'s teachings were woven into the story. I thought it worked so well and was such an interesting concept, and I think that this is a really great book to read if you're looking to get started with your own education on what is going on in the world around you, especially in terms of race. I think that's a really important thing to know more about, and this is a really bold and honest book that will definitely help you learn a little bit more. So overall, I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars, maybe even a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I listened to the audiobook for I Have Lost My Way by Gail Foreman. This is another one that I listened to on Scribd, and it was such an interesting multi-perspective story. I don't think I've ever read a story with multiple perspectives that is interwoven in the way that this one was. It's just so hard to describe, but it follows different characters who are all kind of lost in their own way, and they end up coming together and kind of helping each other find their way again. It really showed how strangers can help each other through. You don't need to know every facet of someone in order to be able to help make their life a little bit better. Especially because it showed how strangers can be in the same situation. You may feel like you're alone and you're the only one going through whatever it is you are going through, but almost guaranteed there's someone else who is in a similar situation and feels likely exactly the same as you do. But in typical Gayle Forman fashion, this was a book that was packed with emotion, and it was also packed with diversity, which was really nice to see. I loved how that culture and diversity was woven into the story, and it was just really a rich tale. It was kind of like a chocolate cake. It was rich in diversity, in culture, in narrative, in perspective, in characterization especially, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next audiobook that I listened to is Emergency Contact by Mary H.K. Choi. This book was a struggle because the one character, I couldn't stand her. And then it's not even like the other characters were better and kind of could pick up the slack. Nope, it was just all really bad characters. The main character of Penny is just a terrible person. You can kind of see where some of her habits come from, but for the most part, she just makes snap judgments about everyone and kind of puts herself on a pedestal and looks down on all the peasants below. And her entire narrative was just kind of her like making these judgments on people and just being honestly just kind of an awful person. I did like the relationship and how it fleshed out over text, and it kind of was like a modern romance and showing a lot of the struggles, how like I know I can identify with that. I sound a million times better on the internet like via text because I can actually like think through my responses and formulate them and all that, and I'm not like I just have to speak out loud and it just comes out blah, 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 blah. It was an interesting story overall. It was just, I don't know. It was weird. So I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, I haven't really thought about it since I closed it. I didn't even write down any notes for it. And I've kind of just like, it's a little bit forgettable for me, unfortunately. And the final book that I read in the month of May is Fury Born by Claire Legrand. I read this as a host for the Fiction Faction Book Club and going to be participating in it for the whole summer, which I'm so excited about. So I read this with Natasha at Toshopolis, Hannah at A Clockwork Reader, Naya at Naya Reads and Smiles, and Maureen at Maureen Keevy. I will link all the book club information down below for you guys, but for the month of June, we are partnering with Source Books to read Fury Born. I was so excited when we chose this as the pick for June because I had wanted to read this book so badly, and now that I have, it was really, really good. It's told from the perspectives of two queens who are centuries apart, but everything they do affects each other, and they have the power to save their world or doom it. I love stories about queens, and these were two queens that I was like, yes girl, you go. Immediately, I fell in love with these characters and I never fell out of love with them. I loved them the entire time. It was just a really great story featuring really powerful female characters. It had a lot of things going on in it, and I think it really set up well for the sequel that I definitely want to read. I mean, this like just came out, but I'm already like, sequel please now? Thank you. So if you are looking for a new epic fantasy that's really sexy and cool and you have lots of great female characters and even great male characters, then you should definitely consider picking this one up, and why not pick it up in June and read it with our book club. Also, I'm going to be in New York for BA and BookCon when this video goes up, but if you guys are going to be at BookCon, I will link the information for the little meet and greet thing that we're doing down below. We're going to be meeting with the author of this and it's going to be tons of fun, so if you're going to be there, definitely check it out. And thank you once again to Source Books for sponsoring us this month. So that is all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys read in the month of May. If you had a great reading month, I hope that you did. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and click that little bell icon so you'll be notified whenever I post. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can also follow me on all of my social media. All of my handles and links and all of that good stuff will be down below for you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video.